All right, folks, make no mistake, President Trump knows how to use the tariff weapon, and that's the subject of the riff. So the president of Colombia thought he was going to prevent President Trump from deporting criminals back to their home country. And Mr. Petro actually turned back 2 U.S. military deportation flights midair. But then President Trump told him to pound sand and threatened to destroy Colombia's economy with a 25% tariff that would have rapidly gone to 50%. So guess what? President Petro changed his mind and offered to send his own government's plane to pick up the Colombian illegals and bring them back home himself. Well, Mexican President Sheinbaum at first refused to cooperate with President Trump's deportation plan and his Remain in Mexico executive order, but now, after a 25% tariff threat, suddenly Mexico has welcomed a total of 4 plane loads, with presumably plenty more coming. This is Mr. Trump's tariff diplomacy. It may be used to deal with unfair trading practices or closing the border, restoring national security, may even be used to end the Russian-Ukraine war. The Columbian tiff has now prompted headline stories about how many countries will feel Mr. Trump's tariffs and how quickly. A Wall Street Journal news story claims momentum is growing among President Trump's advisors to place 25% tariffs on Mexico and Canada as soon as Saturday, February 1st. The Wall Street Journal story cites anonymous advisors, does not cite the president himself, but Mr. Trump has said he's thinking about February 1st. So, without question, Mr. Trump is using tariffs as an effective negotiating tool, and he has plenty of executive authority to back that up. Now the question is, what exactly will the president's tariff strategy be? Looks to me like Mexico's cooperating on the border, though unfortunately Canada at the moment is leaderless. But I don't think Mr. Trump will break up the USMCA trade deal that was so hard to come by in his first term in just the next couple of days. Changes in that deal are likely to be possible. But the administration players, they're not really in place yet, and the time is very short to make that kind of decision by Saturday. Similarly, the president has said he is not ready for a universal tariff quite yet. Now, for my part, I rather like the universal tariff. I especially like the numbers. Roughly $5 trillion in imports at a 10% rate could yield roughly $500 billion in revenues to finance tax cuts. And I think at least 50%, if not more, of the cost of those tariffs will be borne by the exporting countries. Hence, there'll be no more than a slight possible one-off price impact at worst. Mr. Trump's past custom has tended to be bilateral negotiations where he applies the principle of reciprocity. That is, if you tax us, we'll tax you. But if you cut your tax on us, why, we'll cut our tax on yours. In this theoretical sense, Mr. Trump is very much a free trader who would like to see significantly lower tariffs and lower non-tariff barriers and less government subsidies worldwide. Now, many on Wall Street are crazed about the idea of tariffs, but they shouldn't be. The world's trading system's been broken for a long time. Certainly, President Trump is aiming tariffs at China, but he has said he's going to talk to Xi Jinping first. China tariffs, more than twice as high as America's. European Union tariffs, a good 50% higher. Brazil and India, nearly 5 times as high. And the World Trading Organization does nothing about all that. And that is why I think Mr. Trump is completely right to play an America First strategy. But knowing him as I do, no one should be surprised if he keeps us all guessing until he strikes. But make no mistake about it. President Trump knows how to use this tariff weapon. And that is the subject of the riff.